What's happening, guys? Happy Wednesday if you're watching live on the live stream. And welcome to the Dynasty WarZone, the People's Dynasty podcast. On today's show, we're going to ask the question, what the hell is wrong with the tight end position in Dynasty? And normally this is where I bring in my co-host, but tonight I've got to ask the question, what the hell is wrong with Jerry Sinclair? But in his place is a familiar face. He is tonight's man of the hour and the man with the power. You recognize that laugh. If you're watching live on YouTube, you recognize that face. It is none other than our old pal, Matty Kiwoom, now of South Harmon Fantasy Football. Matty, man, it's been too long.
Listen, Memphis, coming on the show was, we've been talking about this for a few weeks, and I've been excited to chop it up, catch up. And then I hop on the stream thinking I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to talk to Jerry. We're going to kind of just catch up on the things outside of fantasy. And then he's a no-show. He's a last-minute call after texting us earlier today that he was okay to go at 9 p.m. EST. Jerry.
Shameful.
Jerry.
It's absolutely shameful. That's the word.
Jerry.
Shameful. So we're recording on YouTube, PlayerProfiler YouTube channel, 9 p.m. Now, if you've been watching religiously since we've switched, it had been 8 p.m. But the one thing that I always tell my guys that I coach, people at work, the number one rule to work with me is be a good teammate. And I walk it like I talk it. And Bradley Stalder from Man vs. the Machine, he reached out today and said, hey, I've got a conflict. Is there any way that we can trade? And I was like, I'm down for it. Let me check with Jerry. Let me check with Matty. Jerry, for once, responded within seconds. Within seconds. He's like, "Yeah, cool. I'm totally good with this." So I got a hold of Matty. He was totally good with this. And what do you know? About 8 p.m., about an hour before showtime, Jerry's like, "Something, wife needs me. Something, you got it." And I was like, just thank God I have Matty Kiwoom. But man, I'm so excited to have you back. I see Theo in the chat. He's excited to see you. But the reason why you haven't been on Player Profiler is because you're working with we'll call it a startup for lack of a better term, but it's South Harmon Fantasy Football. Please tell us about that. You got like a shit show score. Tell us all of the things that you've been doing this fantasy football season.
Yeah, I've been working with Cody, Adam, and Mike, along with a bunch of other guys over at South Harmon Fantasy Football. And, Dynasty, redraft. We're going to get a little bit into the draft season once that time of the year comes. But, yeah, if you want to keep rocking with us, if you want to check us out, 3 places you can go. You can go to southharmonff.com, where we have our Warp tool, which is a wins above replacement tool. It's a great tool for coming up with value in Dynasty or redraft. The rankings are there, articles are there. You can go to South Harmon FF on YouTube, and then patreon.com/South Harmon. There's ways you can rock with us. But yeah, it's fantasy football. It's a bunch of cool, a bunch of fun guys. It's fun to talk it up, much like Play Pro. You got the when the bros are talking fantasy football, there's nothing better, and it's a lot of that going on. So go to those 3 things, southharmonff.com, South Harmon FF on YouTube, and patreon.com/South Harmon. You can check out all the shit we're putting down.
Yeah, and I want to go back to that wins above replacement tool. Now, in baseball, they call it WAR, and it's a very similar. And this is especially in season. Now, you can use their warp tool anytime that you want. But where it's valuable as a dynasty gamer in season is to say, because at the end of the day, I don't care if it's George Kittle, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Patrick Mahomes. It doesn't matter. They're humans outside of the game of fantasy football, but here they're simply points on a spreadsheet. That's all that they are. And when you can see what a guy is, and it just takes the emotion out of it. It just takes the emotion out of it. You're like, hey, look, this guy is producing more points than this guy, but I can take this guy who has a more of a perceived value, like a Garrett Wilson, and you could go out and I'm not saying you would do a 1-for-1 with Garrett Wilson and Jamison Williams, but you could actually see, or Jaden Reed. We're going to talk a little bit about Jaden Reed later in the buys and sells. but you can see, like, dude, Jaden Reed's crushing it, especially when Jordan Love is the core. Doesn't have that Ohio State pedigree, but when you just take the emotion out of it and use a tool like their warp tool, I think that's fantastic. And there's no easier, and this is free if like you just go to South Harmon FF.
Yeah, you get that. Yeah, you can go to South Harmon FF and check out the warp tool. But if you want to get into the nitty gritty, I would suggest highly anyone that wants to kind of go down the path of warp, learn about warp, join the Patreon. Patreon.com/South Harmon, because we got a Discord going. You can talk about it, ask questions, because warp is very it needs to be interpreted a little bit because it's very league specific. But it's like you said, it removes bias. And as a guy who's been playing fantasy football a long time, much like yourself, a guy that very much loves being part of the fantasy streets, I just finished reading the history of fantasy sports. That's the type of sicko that I am. I do get very attached to the player, what they did to me last year, what they did for my team 4 years ago, the championship team that we were on together 3 years ago. Seeing something like wins over replacement kind of just depicts value in a sense that I can just be cold, calm, calculated when I need to execute things during the games. And yeah, I would suggest check it out. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I've always wanted to do this. I have a friend of mine. She's an actual psychologist in North Carolina. She's not a podcaster. She's not a content creator. She's a wife, a mom, couple of little girls. She's trying to do her own business over there. I've always wanted to invite her on to like have her give us some of that psychological hold, good and bad, that a player can have on us. Because I can tell you, I don't know what it is from like a technical standpoint. I can only tell you like how happy seeing Sam Darnold, at least for 4 games, thrive. Because I part of it is there's always been a cognitive dissonance with me that I've always believed Sam Darnold could be good if given the right opportunity. And right now he's on the redemption tour. And I'm dude, he has looked great. But yeah, I would love to know, how can we take some of the emotion out of it and just be better Dynasty gamers? Because if you were playing Dynasty fantasy football, tools are great. South Harmon has their tools, but Player Profiler, they have their own tools. And we're going to get a quick word from Dynasty Deluxe.
This episode is brought to you by Player Profiler, the Dynasty Deluxe package. The rankings are the best in the industry. It includes strategy mode where you can say, hey, change the rankings to be win now. Oh, change the rankings to be productive struggle. There's also a draft planner to help strategize where you should take players, because the draft planner also includes ADP. There's a trade finder where we look up on My Fantasy League and we see trades that are done, including a particular player. Then there's a trade analyzer where you can plug in draft picks, players, and we assign a lifetime value to draft picks out 5 years. The best thing about our trade analyzer, it can't be gamed with volume. And there's mock draft data to see right now what's the market for player X versus player Y, including in the fall when very few mock drafts are happening. And our Dynasty guide, the Dynasty Dominator, would cost you $10 on Amazon, but you get it for free with Dynasty Deluxe, and you get our rookie guide for free, a $25 value. So you get all of that for $45. I mean, it's a great deal.
Matty, how happy were you to hear the Podfather's voice, even if just in commercial form?
There are very few legends like Matt Kelly. And, of course I still tune in to the shows for, I still watch the Dynasty WarZone. I still watch Mind a Mansion and checking out Content Kings with my guy, Alex Dunlap and Matt. And of course, it's always awesome to hear the Podfather talk. Whenever the Podfather's spitting game, I mean, come on.
I mean, and we'll get on with the show, but one of the best people I've met in this space, a true legend. Anyway, let's get into good people, bad tweets, because I want to get your opinion on this. It's my tweet. So will we get Dana White this week? I think we will.
We have
to. So this is what I found funny, because this is just something I was doing research for something else. And I'm looking at scores, and it was like at the time, Patrick Mahomes was QB 11. So I went back last year, and he was QB 8 on the season. And I tweeted this on September 23rd, and I will not out the show, but I tweeted this on September 23rd as just like a thought off the top of my head. And 2 days later, another Dynasty podcast, had that as like their big feature of like what their show was about. So I was like, I'm doing the Lord's work. But I said, it's time to start thinking about Patrick Mahomes not being a top 3 quarterback in Dynasty. Quarterback 8 last year, quarterback 11 through so many games, and I believe he's went down from the time of this tweet. 20-game sample, but not the trend that a top 3 at the position for fantasy football purposes, and I put that in all caps. Make no illusion. Remember the Monstars, Matty? You've seen Space Jam. If the
OG Space Jams, let's make it clear. The OG Space Jam.
No one watches that remake trash.
Yeah,
but the
OG Space Jams.
Thank you. But if we had the Monstars come down and we had to play football as opposed to basketball, Patrick Mahomes is quarterbacking that team without question. It's the easiest. But from a fantasy football standpoint, is it time to start moving Patrick Mahomes on he's kind of still riding that name value?
So going into the season, I guess you could say I'm a late adopter. I'm late to this because I came into this season expecting the MVP type season, the season where they, push Patrick Mahomes. The aggressiveness for the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes, like they could throw for 50 touchdowns. I thought this was all on the table after they brought in Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy, not cheaply, I may add. Even after Hollywood Brown got hurt, I still expected, this is a team that's going to pass a lot, be very, 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 very scary downfield with the speed that they've added. And Patrick Mahomes, to this point, has not cracked the top 10 on a weekly basis. Patrick Mahomes, to this point, hasn't had a single game of 20 fantasy points in most scoring formats. And dating back, Memphis, to last year's bye week, so now he's played 11 games since their bye week last year. He's averaged under 17 points per game. And unfortunately, in that span, they've gone now 8-4 because, of course, they won the game that he didn't play week 18 last year. So they were 8-4, and they won the Super Bowl. So there's no reason for the Chiefs to change anything that they're doing. Do you think they care that they're eking out these wins against the Falcons and the Chargers? No, they're probably going to eke out another win on primetime this Monday night against the Saints. That's the way they win. And as a Patriots guy, I saw that when the Patriots were good. Brady didn't have to light the world on fire. They could win ugly. Winning in the NFL doesn't always translate to winning fantasy performances for us. And the Chiefs don't give a rip. So, yeah, I think now's the time to sell at
for that premium
top 8 prices. And you're probably not even getting premium, but at this point, like for instance, I can say this with some confidence. I'm very excited about this. I sold Patrick Mahomes 2 weeks ago for Jaden Daniels plus. That's gone.
Yeah, you're not getting Jaden Daniels. I don't think you're getting that deal done straight up right now.
You're not getting it straight up right now. But you're also looking at the point where, and this is going to sound blasphemous for the NFL fan. This is not for the NFL fan. This is for the fantasy folks. You could roster Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, pocket passers, and they're going to give you similar value to Patrick Mahomes for rest of season. Now, that sounds crazy because obviously Patrick Mahomes, like you said, if we're passing around the magic football and everyone's powers are getting soaked up and we're creating a super team, he's our quarterback and there's no debate. But for fantasy, it doesn't matter if it's an easy matchup. It doesn't matter if it's a tough matchup. Patrick Mahomes is just going out there, throwing for 260 for 1, maybe 2, probably an interception, and handing off the ball a ton. Doesn't matter if they have Isaiah Pacheco, Carson Steele, or Kareem Hunt. The formula seems to be the same across the board.
Well, a couple of things that you brought up. One that I was already going to bring up is this is why I know he got hurt, so I'll never get validation of this take. But that's why I was so bullish on Isaiah Pacheco coming into the season, because you saw a fundamental shift in the philosophy of this offense.
Mhm.
And this is why Kansas City wins Super Bowls and the San Francisco 49ers gets to Super Bowls. Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes do not care about style points.
None.
They care about championships. And what did Kyle Shanahan do last year? He literally ran Christian McCaffrey into the ground, 30 carries a game. And I said this last year, it's like, how many times are you going to when you're up 30? It doesn't do anybody any good. And the Chiefs are at the point to where they're not going to run Patrick Mahomes into the ground. They're not going to run Travis Kelce into the ground. You hear everybody boo-hooing about Travis Kelce and his start to the season. Guess what? They being the Chiefs, they don't need Travis Kelce to dominate in September. They need Travis Kelce to dominate in December and January, because that's when championships on. I want to hit you, and I think Colin Cowherd may have borrowed this tweet as well, because he did the blind resume game today, and it was Jared Goff versus. And in their last 20 games, okay, Jared Goff 15-6, Patrick Mahomes 14-6. Completion percentage, Jared Goff's got him at 67.9 to 67.4. But here's the one that'll blow you away. In that 20 games, Jared Goff has passed for 500 more yards. He's thrown for 2 more TDs and 3 less interceptions, and his passer rating is 97.5 to Patrick Mahomes' 92.1. I have always, I do this with our patrons at patreon.com/Dynasty WarZone, is if you're trading for a quarterback, do they pass the Jared Goff test? Because all Jared Goff is going to do is going to give you top 8 to 10 at the quarterback position each and every season if he stays healthy. That's just what he's going to do. He did it as a Ram. He's doing it as a Lion. And if they don't pass the Jared Goff test, and you mentioned Baker's got a longer sample now. We've got a season and a quarter of good play, 2 different coordinators. So I'm much more bullish on Baker than I was when he was a rookie. But man, if I could go get Jared Goff, a first, and maybe another player, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I love Patrick Mahomes. Again, I give this guy all of his flowers, but I think it's time to start looking at him in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree?
Completely agree. It's
all right.
Not great for fantasy.
It is not great for fantasy. Well, normally it's Dana White. I'll give you some Dana White, but here's one first.
See, I'm not a monster. I'm just ahead of the curve.
That's how I am with Patrick Mahomes. I'm not a monster for saying trade him, because now a lot of people are saying it. I'm ahead of the curve, but you don't listen to the Dynasty WarZone or Good People Bad Tweets without hearing some Dana White.
That's fucking weird, huh? Holy shit. What the hell was that all about?
So there you go. That was Good People Bad Tweets talking about Patrick Mahomes, and is it time to move him in Dynasty? Matty, I got a question for you.
What's that, baby?
Does Dynasty Fantasy Football have a tight end problem?
Yes, it does. Yes, 100%. Yes, it's despicable. It's awful. And the real reason why the problem at tight end is so diabolical is because last year we were led to believe into this. We were just hook, line, and sinker dragged into this sense of security of this tight end renaissance. Don't be afraid of the young tight end. They can play. Look at Laporta. Look at Kincaid. Oh my God, these guys are coming and they're good right away. And then it was all just ripped away from us. And now we're back to not knowing a damn thing in regards of this hierarchy. Who's what? Where do you start? Who do you play? It's absolutely it's diabolical, and there's a massive tight end problem. And to me, I won't say this yes because I'm a dinosaur in the game itself, but if this continues for another year, I might be the no tight end extra flex game. That might be my new move because this sucks.
You know, good friend of the Dynasty WarZone and really the fantasy community in general, Sal Lito, doesn't do as much content as he used to. He hosts the annual Scott Fishbowl Podathon. He actually made that very statement on this podcast. It was probably 5 years ago, 4 years ago. And I think outside of tight end premium leagues, because part of having a tight end premium leagues is it puts a premium on good tight ends, which we've not had a lot of.
Yeah.
We've had some, and so Sal was also in favor of that. He was ahead of that curve. But yeah, I could see where like in a standard PPR league where everybody gets a PPR, running back, wide receiver, tight end, you don't have a tight end. You go one quarterback, one running back, one wide receiver, as many flexes as you want, and one super flex. I could see that being. And if you have a guy that's killing it, like a George Kittle, because let's say you had 6 flexes, right? Just randomly you had 6 flexes. The odds of you having 6 combinations of wide receivers and running backs that are scoring more points on a weekly basis, even in non-premium, than like say a George Kittle, an Evan Ingram in full point PPR when healthy. You're still going to play your tight ends. You're just not locked into the roster construction of tight ends.
That's right. There will the tight ends that would be played with any bit of excitement will still be played, just under the banner of a flex.
Yeah, and like I said, at tight end premium, you would have to continue to have the tight end position as it is. I'll tell you what, you will talk about diabolical. It's a great word, by the way. It's not used enough in today's language. I think it's because you can't combine it with other things. You actually have to get all the syllables out. Diabolical. It's a great word. I'll tell you what's truly diabolical. That's must start 2 tight end leagues and tight end premium. Theo, the Graham Poobah of all things content over here at Player Profiler, he and I and Jerry, we all each have a team in this league where it's a pretty salty buy-in, and you must start 2 tight ends in this league, and it's an MFL league, my football league. If you're a newer dynasty game, well, you know,
give me all the 2 tight ends, no MFL. Rough.
We try to keep the language, somewhat clean. Dana White notwithstanding.
Sleeper exists, boys. Sleeper exists.
Last year I was an unexpected contender in this league. Like, I was not planning on contending. I hit on some rookies. I was doing really, really well. Well, last year on MFL, Taysom Hill had tight end eligibility. So I traded for Taysom Hill. I ended up getting second in the league, got a nice payday because it's a pretty salty buy-in. But this year, because I for a 2 tight end team, I had it pretty good, right? I had Pat Freiermuth, I had Evan Ingram, I have Hunter Henry, and I had Taysom Hill. So I'm stacked in a must-start 2 tight end premium league, and all of a sudden, somewhere around like May, MFL took away the tight end position from Taysom Hill, and he's listed as a quarterback. Excuse my language, hit the pause button if you got the kiddos in the car or you're not wearing your earphones at work, but I got fucked.
Yeah.
I don't know another way to say it. I got fucked.
He's useless.
He is useless in that format, but the tight end position has been bad. And if you see the beautiful thumbnail of this podcast on YouTube, even if you're not a YouTube listener, go to YouTube, go to Player Profiler, go to the live section, and look at this thumbnail. And Matty, do you know what's on the thumbnail?
I do.
Okay. Well, I'll tell them because it was my thought. It's a picture of Kyle Pitts and a donkey. Do you know why I picked a donkey?
Well, if I had to guess, what I would say is if you were to use any aggressive draft capital or to have traded big-time assets to acquire Kyle Pitts, you could be called a donkey, or, as we say here in the streets, a jackass.
A jackass. That's right. In the poker world, if you are a person that makes a suboptimal play, they will call you a donkey in the poker world, or they'll say you're donking off. They've actually turned it into a verb to where you can.
Is it really you're donking off?
Yeah, you can donk off your chips. You can donk off a hand, and that's the tie-in. And Jerry's not here tonight to have to, because with Matty Kiwoom in the house, we would have called him on the carpet. We would have called him on the carpet because he had Kyle Pitts listed as his tight end 2. So I think it was maybe 7 weeks ago, we did our rankings. We did all 4 positions, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. That's the 4. Everybody knows them. And, Jerry had Kyle Pitts as his tight end 2. And I don't normally do this. Like I would out him even if he were here, but I recorded that conversation, Matty, and he did not know about it. And I'm trying to talk him out of it. So have you ever wondered, like, this is like one of those, we didn't hit the record button or Jerry didn't realize he was being recorded. Do you want to hear what that conversation sounded like?
You got to play it for me. You got to.
Okay. Well, this is a conversation between me and Jerry when he told me he had Kyle Pitts tied into.
You stupid? What's the matter with you?
I apologize.
What's the matter with you?
Sorry.
What the fuck is the matter with you?
That is a real conversation
Sounds exactly like you.
It was exactly how that conversation went. But and not just to pick on Kyle Pitts, but I went back and did some looking, and you can look at DLF, you can look at Player Profiler. You want to look at Player Profiler. Let's keep it 100 here. But like over the last 24 months, here's a list of guys in no particular order of guys that have been given the mantle, the label of tight end 1 in Dynasty. Are you ready, Matty?
I think
Travis
so.
Kelce, which 2 years ago, more than justified. Mark Andrews, as I have him listed on the show sheets. Kyle Schitz. Trey McBride. You didn't even mention Trey McBride when you were talking about guys that had broken out.
Yeah.
Because like last year at the end of the season, he had that huge 7-8 game run. The Dynasty tight end 1. Sam Laporta. More like Sam Laporta Potty. Most recently, Brock Bowers. And then he didn't get listed, but you mentioned his name, but he did have a ton of steam on his name. I don't think I ever heard him the 1. Maybe he was for Theo. Dalton Kincaid. And at some point for all of these guys, leave Travis Kelce out of it for a minute. All of these guys, if you traded for them or drafted them at their tight end 1 position, you are so far in the negative right now that it may be hard to get out. Does that seem like a fair statement to you, Matty?
It's more than fair. It's a cold splash of water on the faces of everyone who invested too heavily in tight end, especially in the seasonal league guys. You're already now 4 games in, and this could be damage that you can't bounce back from having maybe went, I'm gonna tight end hoard this year. I'm gonna go Laporta in the 3rd and McBride in the 4th, and your team stinks.
Yeah, it's tough action out there, and I'm going to throw in a bonus buy and sell because I want to talk about Travis Kelce.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I think regardless of whether this is a great time whether you're a buyer or a seller, meaning you're a contender or a rebuilder in Dynasty. If you have Travis Kelce, this is where like I'm wearing an LSU hat tonight. And I did that in honor of Jaden Daniels, because LSU, whether we like them in the SEC or whatever, the LSU Tigers have produced so many dynasty relevant players for us, from Brian Thomas Jr., Jaden Daniels from this rookie class, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. Maybe you've heard of them. But in honor of those guys, I'm wearing an LSU hat tonight. But as a dynasty GM, you need to put on your salesman cap. Because like right now, if you're a contender, I think Travis Kelce's volume is about to pick up. What do you think?
Travis Kelce's
right? No Rashee Rice.
There's no Rashee Rice. And the thing about tight end, I said this when I was on. I went on Wake and Take with Jason last week, and I said he's still going to finish tight end 1. It was my bold take here, and that was before the Rashee Rice injury. The tight end position is so shallow. It should be viewed as less than a year. In Dynasty, you want to project. Tight end, you're a moron if you project that tight end because you're going to get burned. You just compartmentalize tight end position in very short increments. And Travis Kelce, Name me anybody on a weekly. If you needed to win one game, Memphis, this is how shallow, how short-sighted the tight end position should be played in Dynasty Redraft. It doesn't matter. If you needed to win one matchup in fantasy, what tight end are you picking?
Right now, with everybody's health, Travis Kelce. But
so then he's your tight end one, your dynasty tight end one. He should be a buy in every league because at the end of the day, the true nightmare of the tight end position, the true reason that it should potentially be abolished is because it doesn't matter how bad Mark Andrews is. No one can look themselves in the mirror when they're setting their lineup on Sunday and go, "Yep, give me Tyler Conklin." They won't. Nobody can look at their lineup and say, "You know who I'm going to play? I'm going to play Cole Kmet over Travis Kelce." You're not doing it. And that's the true nightmare of the position.
Yeah, and when I'm talking about Travis Kelce, if you're buying, the conversation's easy. It's like, look, I'm giving you a last decent cash out. What am I offering? I'm going to offer a second. In tight end premium leagues, I'll offer a second because it's going to be a cheat code for you. Even in non-tight end premiums, it's going to be a cheat code for you with Travis Kelce. But you have to be a salesperson at that point. You got to go in, you got to negotiate. Hey, listen, I mean, how many more years does he have? If he has to, run hard this year, does he come back next year? Because, who else is he going to throw the ball to? Juju Smith-Schuster? Xavier Worthy's been interesting on some big plays. Mm-hmm. But this is – and the other guy you mentioned that, who would I want? If he was perfectly healthy, Evan Ingram in PPR would be in that conversation. Because when he's healthy, I'm not saying that the Jaguars would have won more games if he was healthy, but I think that offense would look a lot different if Evan Ingram was healthy. He would be my tight end too. He's another guy you can go by. And then if you're selling Travis Kelce, you just turn your salesman cap around the other way and say, listen, you want to win this fucking league or not?
That's right. That's right.
You want to win this league or not? How many targets do you think Travis Kelce is going to get over the next 12 weeks with no Rashee Rice, with no Hollywood Brown? It's literally Travis Kelce, Juju Smith-Schuster, Xavier Worthy. And if you're Patrick Mahomes, who are you leaning on the next 12 weeks when you're going for the three-peat as a Super Bowl champion? It's Travis Kelce. We've already seen the one game. I'm telling you, you're going to start hearing more and more of this. Leverage this as the seller. If you're buying, buy quickly because, again, some people are going to start talking about this from his volume uptick. You're not going to hurt yourself paying a second. And if I was really, really wanting to distance myself from my competition in a league, I'd give this year's second and next year's second. I'd give a 25 and a 26. Yeah, it might be a bit of an overpay. I wouldn't give any first, not even a single solitary one. But I give you a couple of seconds for Travis Kelce, and I double emphasize that in a tight end premium league, Matty.
I agree. I think that's a good price. That's a nice way to keep yourself from being too over your skis in terms of your long-term investment in a guy like Travis Kelce. But, and this, I will say this, if I was looking at the top 5 tight ends in Dynasty or in terms of points per game right now, and I was looking at Kincaid, and I was looking at Pitts, and I was looking at Laporta, and I was looking at McBride, and it was all these young, up-and-coming guys, I'd say to myself, okay, Travis Kelce has been dethroned. He's been dethroned. But when you look at it and you go, Dallas Goedert, because there's been no one else but him, Cole Kmet, Brock Bowers after 2 bad weeks, Pat Freiermuth, Likely is still hovering around the top 8 because he had good game. He had one good game. Right. Because of that, there's no way I could ever get away from Travis Kelce. I am not going to go away from Travis Kelce because, again, even Mark Andrews, buy Mark Andrews. People think he's done. So what? Now you're going to put your confidence in a guy like
great time to buy
Cole Kmet? No fucking way, man. No way. I'm sorry. There's just been, you play this game long enough, you understand how little of a blip 4 weeks is, and even just one season. How many times? Remember, this is a different conversation of a different position, but remember when Jamar Chase couldn't catch the football? Remember when
Yeah,
Jamar
I
Chase
remember
couldn't
that
see the ball because there's no
it didn't have the stripes on the ball. Yeah,
Right. And then all of a sudden, just like that, no one's gonna remember it. Remember when Jonathan Taylor, he kind of sucked the first couple years ago, and then boom, he was running back one that season, and he's still a dominator when he's healthy. It's just sometimes, man, the way the things laid out, it's like a tight end position was a flat circle. Everything I thought in July, I'm back to thinking now.
Well, I want to stick with Mark Andrews, but it really goes for any position. And I didn't have it loaded into the soundboard for tonight's show. I've already, played my sound drops for the night. But one of my original sound drops that I've ever used on the Dynasty WarZone was the Macho Man Randy Savage. But it's not just a funny Macho Man Randy Savage quote. It's actually true. The cream will rise to the top. These guys that are struggling right now, whether it's Laporta, McBride, Mark Andrews, I'm not going to put Kyle Shitz in that column because he had a nice rookie season. And a little side note on him, because I have one final tight end question for you before we jump into our buys and sells for these good people. What you're hoping for with Kyle Shitz is that he gets the Evan Ingram. You're hoping that he gets out of Atlanta. In the same way, if you look at the trajectory of their careers between Evan Ingram and Kyle Pitts, they're very similar. Great rookie year, breakout rookie year, didn't do anything after that, had to go to a different team. He broke out. I believe he broke either the record for receptions or targets by a tight end last year.
Yeah.
But there are two guys that are underperforming. And we got Podson in the chat wanting to know when the Podfather commercials, coming up. It's coming. You didn't miss it, Podson, brother. We got you. It'll be here before you know it. But who bounces back first? Trey McBride or Sam Laporta? See, this is tough. This is tough.
I'm going to go with McBride. And the reason why I'm going to go with McBride is the ways that the Cardinals win are they're going to primarily come through the air, and it's going to come through Marvin Harrison, and then Trey McBride is no doubt the number 2 pass catcher, the number 2 player in that offense behind Marvin Harrison. Whereas Laporta, it will never be number 1 because Amon-Ra's the sun god. Jameson Williams is making a damn good case that he should be the number 2. And with that offensive line, in any given game, when they could run it down the opponent's face, they will with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. And I think, of course, spike weeks are always going to be on the table with a player like Laporta. I'm starting to believe Laporta looks a lot like Patrick Mahomes, where how effective he is in the NFL game does not translate to fantasy, because he was very effective on that Monday Night Football game against the Seahawks last week. It was his best game. And what did he have? 7, 8 fantasy points? It does not feel like he's going to have a lot of those big, robust games unless he scores touchdowns. And that was the knock against him. 10 touchdowns for a tight end. As much as we love it in the moment, we hate it the following year.
It's very tough. And that was as a rookie too. And we already talked about Kyle Pitts fell off after his rookie year. Evan Ingram fell off after his rookie year. It's not always, the easiest road and a sustainable road for young tight ends in this league. I agree 100%. Trey McBride would be my answer. If you go back to week 1, a game they were dominating early against Buffalo. Now Buffalo came back and won that game, but the offense played really, really well. And Trey McBride had 9 targets, caught 5 of them. Then in their one win of the season, he had 6 targets, caught all 6, 67 yards. And then all of a sudden he went down to 6 and he only caught 3 for 25 yards. And what happened around week 2, week 3, we started to hear the drum beat about we got to get Marvin Harrison Jr. more involved. I think they may have went ditch to ditch. Like they were too far to the not using Marvin Harrison Jr. enough, and now they're wanting to use him more. And it's not hard to hear Marvin Harrison Jr. talking to the offensive coordinator and Kyler Murray going, look, man, my peer, my counterpart in New York, Malik Neighbors, is setting the world on fire.
Mhm.
I was the first wide receiver off of the board. Guys, can we get me the ball? But I think as the season progresses, as we go on, you'll see Trey McBride become more involved. And I will tell you, and Matty, we're getting ready to go to the Podfather, but I will tell you, do you know when the best time to buy Trey McBride will be? Any guesses?
I think it was 5 days ago when the concussion happened.
No, you have not missed the window to get him. The best time to get him will be a week from now, because this week he'll be coming off of a concussion, little groggy, and then he plays the San Francisco 49ers defense, a really good defense. They're currently the 5th toughest matchup for tight ends. So you see how this goes. Comes off the concussion. He played poorly 2 games in a row. Then all of a sudden he's going to have another poor performance. I'm telling you, you'll be able to swoop in there. He is your ideal target. If Trey McBride's on a contender and you got Travis Kelce, you're going to go offer Travis Kelce 1-for-1 for Trey McBride 1 week from tonight. 1 week from tonight, Matty. And you know what could be helpful with things like concussions and other injuries? The injury finder.
Hey, you're in your fantasy draft and someone says, hey, that guy's injury prone, I don't want him. And you're like, I don't know. I don't think you can predict injuries. Well, guess what? Now you can. Injury proneness is real. At Player Profiler, we have the data on these players, and it's all in the Injury Finder app. Their injury track record back through time, exactly where they were injured, how severe it is. We look at the BMI data, and we crunch it all together, and we give you probabilities that a player will miss multiple games this NFL season, as well as the complete database of NFL injuries and the ability to compare 2 players and look at their injury track record. The Injury Finder is powerful, and it's only $5. If it's worth it to have that peace of mind when you're drafting, go get it.
You like that transition? Smooth transition to my boy, the Podfather.
Fantastic. And the Pod Son in the chat, very excited to see the commercial. And listen, there are very few people who do commercials like the Podfather. If I was a local car dealership, I might have to reach out to Mr. Kelly and be like, hey, listen, you want to come hawk some Toyotas for me? Because I think he could put together a commercial for some car lots, if you know what I mean. You know, the guy's got some talent.
Sidebar, and we're not quite to the ridiculousness at the end, but if you're looking for an Instagram handle, and you have to go back and look at his older stuff, his name's Andrew Yarden, and he's a used car salesman from Kentucky. At gold. Now, his commercials were so good that he was losing business because they were getting negative publicity. Like, his commercials are great, like in a way that we would find funny, but like Joe Average would not find funny. He was not as polished as the Podfather. I will say that. Well, Matty, we've come out of the tight end position. Thank God. I'm not going to ask you who is your current Dynasty tight end 1, because it really doesn't matter, because they're all playing bad. Because the minute you label one the tight end 1, you'll never be able to get him in a reasonable deal. We wouldn't even go into Brock Bowers. But let's go into a guy. I like to wrap the show up every week with some buys and sells, because that's how you win leagues. So give me a guy right now that you're buying. I want to make sure I'm using the right verbiage here. Oh, yeah. The time is now. The guys to buy ASAP. Right now, who are you buying?
So buying can be tricky because there's 2 ways to approach it. There's 2 ways to climb the mountain when it comes to buying players in fantasy. One, you buy low. You find a guy that's sticking out in a certain way. He's popping in certain metrics that you believe he's going to eventually produce some fantasy points, so you want to buy low. The other side, the other path on this mountain is buying on a player that's considered high value, but you look at the data and he's going to continue to skyrocket. And that's where the path I'm going to take here with my buy. Jaden Reed is my buy. Jaden Reed is somebody that I'm willing to pay pretty insane prices for right now.
Well, this is going to help out a listener, because one of our, and it was Jared,
I saw it.
Jared in there.
I hope he's still here.
So I agree. I don't have to talk about Jaden Reed because I always talk about Jaden Reed. He was one of my guys, which is weird because Jerry literally graduated college with him. Like they were next to each other. Like Jaden Reed walked across, Jerry walked across. How am I higher on Jaden Reed than Jerry? But what are you?
Whoa, Jerry got a little whop with Jaden Reed?
Like Jaden Reed got a diploma, Jerry Sinclair got a diploma. That is a fact.
So they're just giving diplomas out to everybody, apparently.
Well, I mean, I believe the legitimacy of Jaden Reed's more than Jerry Sinclair's, but that not being said,
but Jerry graduated from Michigan State. Then Michigan State. Can I have a diploma? Can I be a Spartan?
It's just show up, pay the dues, and they hook you up. Anyway, what are you paying in Dynasty? And you can go with quarterbacks if it's a super flex or picks, or what are you trying to move?
So for me, at this point, there's two approaches. You could do the tier down approach, which my guy Mike was really just kind of made famous, where you take a player like a Garrett Wilson, and then you tier down to a Jaden Reed, and then you get a second. You get a running back that you need this year. Depending on what your team build is, that could, that's really going to dictate that second piece. But if I'm buying in the traditional sense, I'm okay giving a first plus. Because Jaden Reed now going into his second year, using the win over replacement tool on South Harmon, even without playing with Jordan Love 50% of the time, Memphis, he's the fifth highest player in WARP. He's got just under a win over replacement in terms of his value in fantasy. And then when you go to play a pro and you just look at his analytical profile, he checks all the boxes. He's fourth in yards per outrun, fourth in yards after catch, third in formation adjusted yards per outrun, fourth in juke rate. He's just awesome at receiver. And it's the situation where Matt LaFleur obviously took a page out of the the Sean McVay tree, which took a page out of the Kyle Shanahan tree, blah, blah, blah. He's plays like Stephon Diggs, but he's used like Deebo Samuel. And that's the recipe for success.
I love the Jaden Reed take. We can talk about Jaden. We can just do like an entire podcast on Jaden Reed and his excellent. Let me ask you a question. As an experienced Dynasty gamer, what would you get in addition to if you sent Garrett? So you're crafting a trade. Mm-hmm. You put in Garrett Wilson. You're asking for Jaden Reed. And what do you think the plus on that could be?
So if I'm I'll look at it through two lenses. If I'm looking to compete this year, I think I could take my Garrett Wilson, get a Jaden Reed, and on top of that, get a Travis Etienne or a Joe Mixon,
which you could use as a contender.
Right. You're looking to add running backs if you're contending, and if you're rebuilding, could you get Jaden Reed and Jackson Smith and Jigba? I think you could. Could you get Jordan Addison? Could you bridge the gap and get Zay Flowers on top of it? It's starting to get a little bit nutty. And right now, maybe Garrett Wilson isn't the best example because Garrett Wilson hasn't fired yet. He might be more
true.
In a high category, but I just really mean that from the sense of, these first round, second round wide receivers that we were taking in startups. So, it's becoming tougher to find the name because Puka's hurt now. And now after last week, Rashee Rice is hurt now, but AJ Brown's hurt. But if you take the totality of that, you want to take if you want to get crazy nutty, you take your Amon-Ra St. Brown, tear down to Jaden Reed. Now that second piece is
substantial.
It's substantial. I mean, if you took Amon-Ra in Dynasty and you sold it for Jaden Reed, could you get Kyron Williams? Could you get Devon Achane? Could you get Brian Robinson? I tend to think you might be pretty close. You might be at the table. So if you're tearing down, I mean, the time is now because as we saw in the chat, there were, just the first for Jaden Reed is already becoming on the low end of the spectrum in terms of the pay scale.
So this is a Memphis special, by the way. You guys should write this down unless you're driving, then keep your hands at 10 and 2, eyes on the road. Well, people listen to this show as they're driving into work of a given morning. Here's a Memphis special because while Garrett Wilson hasn't fired yet, he has that name cachet. He was a Buckeye. I'm sending Garrett Wilson in a second for Jaden Reed and a first. And I think you can get that deal done. I think if you sent that in someone's inbox, they're going to believe that the Jaden Reed information is not sustainable and that the Garrett Wilson's only going to fire. Yeah, I'll give my first. I think you get that deal done. And I think you like that deal. That's a Memphis special. I'll gladly give you my second, where the odds of getting especially if you're a contender, getting a usable player at like that 20th overall pick is so much lower than getting in that top 10 or whatever. My buy, you already mentioned his name, and I love to buy when the news is bad. I'm going to go buy Rashee Rice, especially if I'm a contender, because people are going to say, but Memphis, he's hurt. I understand. It's an ACL. We got Nick Chubb. He destroyed his knee again, and his practice window opened, and we're into week 4. Oh, and you know what Kansas City's probably going to do next year? They're not going to put Rashee Rice on the pup. You know why, Matt? You know why I can say that?
Why?
Because they're going to let him do his pup time as suspension time.
They're going
to run that concurrent. You know, like if you get arrested, not that I have, but, you know, I know some things about some things. If you get sentenced for multiple things, they can run concurrently. They can run at the same time. So he can stay on the active roster. They'll have to do some roster maneuvering, but he'll be suspended. But then he gets that 4 to 6 weeks off to get his knee right. And then all of a sudden you've got a young premium wide receiver in like going into year 3. What will essentially be, hey, I can get an extension after this year because Rashee Rice wasn't a first round pick. If you're a contender and you really feel like you're going to finish in the top 3 in your league in a 12-man league, go give him your first. You're not going to draft, can't say definitively, but the odds of you drafting someone that will put as many points in your 2025 roster as Rashee Rice, as opposed to the guy that you'll get at 110, 111, 112. Man, that's a big bridge to cross. So that's why I'm like Rashee Rice. That's the kind of things that I'm trying to go get. And if you're like if you're a rebuilder and maybe you got like a Mike Evans or a DK Metcalf or someone that's playing okay, maybe they're 28, Chris Godwin. I might try to get squeeze a little plus out of Chris Godwin, yeah. But someone as a veteran who's performing, and I can go out and get this guy that is only going into year 3, great offense. We've seen his usage. ACL's not a death sentence. That's my buy, Matty.
I love it. Rashee Rice in some leagues is going to come now because what people are going to assume is the injury will compound with the suspension, but I agree with you. They're just going to run that baby concurrently, and that's going to be big.
You like that, don't you? Because hopefully that when Brett Veach hears this, because I know he listens, that's what I would do, Brett. I would just wait till that suspension gets handed down. I wouldn't. I put him on the suspension list. Everything works out fine. So all right, there was our buys. Now you got to sell me somebody. And what I like to call these sells is like the what are you waiting for? I don't have the Shia LaBeouf drop. What are you waiting for? Just do it. Who are you selling right now, Matty?
This might be controversial. This might seem a bit hasty, but I think people listening of the Dynasty WarZone need to pull up the pants, put their big boy pants on, the big girl pants on. It's time to sell Bijan Robinson. It's time to sell.
Say it louder for the people in the back.
It's time to sell Bijan Robinson. Is the kid talented? Of course. But is he a destroyer in fantasy? Well, far from it. And using the warp tool, what we have gathered so far this year, he's the 20th ranked running back in warp. He's outside of the top 35 overall players. He's not dominant. His dominator rating on Player Pro is at 25th. His production premium is at 20th. 23rd in juke rate, 34th in breakaway run rate. It's not that he's not talented. He's just, for whatever reason, not as good as the market suggests. And if you go to like Keep Trade Cut, other market indicators, he's the running back one. He's the free pass. He's the blank check that gets you at any table when negotiating a trade. And right now is the perfect time to just sell high and accrue a ton of value in fantasy, because what you can get for a Bijan Robinson is going
especially
to
in a one
change the
QB,
landscape.
especially in a one QB.
In a one QB, you're shopping in any aisle that you want.
I mean, you can go out and get a premium. I bet you in a one QB league, it may be tough because his stock's super high right now. You could have a conversation like, hey, what does a Bijan Robinson Malik Neighbors trade look like?
That's right.
Bec-
That's right. You're at
That's
least
the
sitting at
neighborhood.
the table. You have the chip to sit at the blackjack table to play the hand with Bijan Robinson, and where you can negotiate it. There are going to be leagues, especially in the more casual leagues, and that's not a dig. It's just a reality. There's leagues where a Bijan Robinson, because of how the community and how the industry has hyped him up, you sit down, you might be able to add a very, very minute second piece and get Malik Neighbors and David Montgomery, Malik Neighbors and Tony Pollard.
You could make a crazy big trade.
Big trade.
Like you could get Malik Neighbors and how about this? How about we'll make a mega trade? You send Garrett Wilson and Bijan Robinson, and you get back Malik Neighbors and Brian Robinson.
I think you could get more. I think that's the type of move you can make.
When people see the names Bijan Robinson and Garrett Wilson, they just like stars, twinkle across their eyes, and it's just like, and I pulled this up because I wanted to validate this before I brought it up. Last year, Bijan Robinson did not catch Brian Robinson in total PPR points until week 14. Currently, as we sit here through 4 games, no buys, no injuries, as we sit, Brian Robinson is your RB 14 and Bijan Robinson is your RB 20. All right. Whether it was Desmond Ridder, Kirk Cousins, things could get better with Michael Penis Jr. I mean, it could, possibly could. I don't know. But, it's the same thing I feel about Kyle Pitts as I feel about Bijan. About Bijan Robinson. It's not that they're bad, but I'm like, you're on your second head coach and you're on your second offensive coordinator, and you're still not doing the thing that we told you were going to do. Because last year it was Arthur Smith's fault, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, he's holding back Kyle Pitts. It's everybody else's fault. Mm-hmm. Listen, guys, if your first ex-wife hates you, that's fine. Not every relationship's meant to last. But if your current wife hates you too, that's a problem. What, is that not true?
Listen, facts are facts. What do you want me to tell you?
And I'm going to give you a guy to sell. Also going to stick at the running back position. I'm going to go Kyron Williams. And it's not because I was actually the guy in the offseason. Like, I didn't make my summer appearance on Mind to Mansion with the Podfather, but I really wanted to. I really, really, really wanted to, because I wanted to go back and forth with Kyron, because I was one of the Kyron believers.
And listen, I can back you up this. I can back this up for you. We were sitting at the draft house in Michigan, looking over the lake, beautiful house, beautiful landscape. Mere hours after the Rams selected Blake Corum, and you were telling me, and this is 100% true, everybody. Memphis, you were telling me how everyone's going to want Blake, but I'm going to go get Kyron. I'm just going to go get Kyron. That's how much of a Kyron believer you were. You were buying mere hours after the Corum selection.
100%. And here's why. It's very simple. Matty, when you went to South Harmon, or if you switched jobs in your day job, are you going to take people that you believe in with you?
Of course.
Why? Because you want to be successful, right?
Yes.
So Jim Harbaugh, who rode Blake Corum to a national championship at Michigan, looked at his running back room of Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins, and at the time Josh Kelly. Blake Corum's there in the third. He's like, nah, we're good.
We're good.
Told me all I needed to know.
Mm-hmm.
We know they wanted to run the ball. We got a guy coming off of an ACL and an Achilles, a guy who's 97 years old in NFL years, and Gus Edwards, and a guy, and so a has been and a never will be in Josh Kelly. They're like, no, we're good. We'll pass on Blake Corum.
Mm-hmm.
Super easy. The reason why I'm telling you to sell, though, is that the NFL stands for not for long. And I like Kyron Williams. They're going to continue to ride him, but he's not been the most durable. And it's Ronnie Rivers as the backup you want there. I don't know that Blake Corum's even had more than like a snap or two of actual offensive play. I know he's played some special teams. It's a good time if you need some running back depth. Now's a great time to be selling to a contender.
Yeah.
And it's nothing against Kyron Williams, but remember, any injury, you're no longer getting a first. You're getting a second. And unless you, the current GM, are going to ride Kyron Williams to a championship, go let someone else do it. It's a win-win. You get a first-round pick. You're not contending this year. When you're going to be contending, Kyron Williams is probably not going to be producing at the level that he is. So you're never going to be able to leverage what he's doing for you. This is one of those rare trades where you can trade a guy and both guys can win. Contender's going to get a lot of points on their weekly, score sheet, and you're going to get future capital to help you rebuild your team if that's the direction you're going. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah. Kyron Williams is a luxury for the contenders. And if you're not contending, you can't hold. This is a guy you don't hold on to. Because even if he gets through the season healthy, we ran through this same script last year. You weren't getting a first for him in August. I think even now you might struggle to get a first when push comes to shove in maybe Halloween.
You may have to add a third. You may have to add a third.
Right. But the point the reason why I say that is I think what you said is very, very accurate, and it needs to be heard by anyone who rosters Kyron and doesn't fancy themselves a true championship contender. If he gets hurt, even if it's for 3 weeks, if he gets hurt for 1 week and Blake Corum goes for $120 in that game,
or Ronnie Rivers,
or anybody, you're not getting a first. That door is shut. So if you don't really fancy yourself as a contender, a championship contender, now is the time to sell, because there are still opportunities to get a Jonathan Brooks plus a Trey Benson plus. You're able to now get the younger asset plus if you're not contending, or a first.
I love the Jonathan Brooks take. I don't know that I want Trey Benson. I've seen him run into too many linemen, run up their backs. I don't think that kid can play dead in a Western, but to be determined on if Trey Benson will be a thing. Again, like I said, it's one of the rare trades that work out for both the person selling Kyron Williams and the person contending. It's the same question you asked when you were selling Travis Kelce. Who wants to win this goddamn league? There's currently five running backs in the NFL averaging 20 PPR points a game. Kyron Williams is one of that five. He's in a company with Alvin Kamara, Kenneth Walker. He did miss a couple of games. Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Kyron Williams. End of list. Those are the guys. So you go, who needs a running back putting up? Who wants a running back on a contender? Who wants to win this thing? Who's serious, guys? Because if you're just fiddle fucking around, then I'm going to wait, and someone's going to be interested. That's how you sell, Matty. I do want to keep you for just a couple of more minutes if you have time.
I do,
because this is the official nonsense portion of the program.
I love nonsense.
It's got to come back. We didn't do much nonsense last week, so the last 5-ish minutes, we talk about nonsense. We've talked about Deadpool and Wolverine, pop culture things. Now I know if you're watching Matty on Player Profiler's YouTube channel, you see a WWE championship belt over what is his left shoulder. And that championship belt, so WWE, I know you're a fan. Have you watched any of the Mr. McMahon documentary on Netflix?
I haven't watched it yet, but from what I've heard, it sounds like a lot of if you understand the happenings of the WWF that is now the WWE, you kind of already know everything. It seems like it was I don't know. I haven't seen it, but it sounds like it's less of the gotcha that maybe it was built up to be and more about the history, which I kind of already knew. I've seen, so I haven't really been too eager to watch it. Have you watched it?
I was hooked like a crack addict. I could not get enough. I watched the first episode last Tuesday. Then I watched 4 episodes last Wednesday, and I snuck in the final episode before I watched that brutal shit show that was the Dallas New York Giants game. Me as a lifelong wrestling fan, like I've not actually watched any wrestling since literally Stone Cold Steve Austin. If Austin does anything, I'm in. His podcast. I mean, I'm just a big Stone Cold guy. But
you have a very Stone Cold aura, I will say. Very Steve Austin aura.
You know, I've said this before, but like this is the nonsense portion. He made me want to do a podcast. For the longest time, he did a podcast, and they still do classics, like 10-year-old episode of his podcast, and it still draws in like the top 10 of pro wrestling podcasts. But I will say, even if you're a lifer of a wrestling fan, you will learn a lot. You will see a lot of interesting things in the first 2 episodes and the final episodes. Episodes 3, 4, and 5. This is a lot of, hey, I know this. This is when, you know, like a lot of people were watching in the late 90s, early 2000s. They were in college, and it was huge. It was a big to do, and it was pop culture. Like at the time, I think a combined between the two, like 10, 12 million people were watching. It was like 5% of the country at the time. So I cannot recommend it enough. Do you have any other TV recommendations for these people?
I will say this. If you're looking for a funny show, an FX show that's on Hulu right now called The English Teacher is pretty fucking funny. My wife's a teacher, so she really, really likes it because it has like a lot of the if you know type vibes. But I'm not a teacher, and I still find it to be very funny. I think that show's hilarious. So if you're looking for a funny show, The English Teacher's good. And then the Aaron Hernandez show mockumentary thing is pretty good too. And I've also haven't watched it, but I've also heard the Melendez brothers thing on Netflix is pretty good. So
yeah, my wife wants to watch that, so that will have to be weekend watching with her. I have one last one for you. I'll get you out of here. Have you ever seen the movie Tombstone?
Yes.
Well, it's an iconic movie. Now, it's never going to be up there with like Citizen Kane and all of these all-time greatest cinematic masterpieces, right? But it's an iconic movie. And, you know, you had Val Kilmer playing Doc Holliday, Kurt Russell playing Wyatt Earp, and it was very movieized. On Netflix, they have a Wyatt Earp series that really goes into depth on this, and it's a 6-parter. A couple of weeks ago, I had to go to Vegas for work, and on the flight from Indy to Vegas, or actually from Vegas back to Indy, I got through the first 5, and then I watched the 6th one the next day, and I wanted to stay up, but I got back like at 1 a.m, and I was like, I got to take my son to a college visit the next day, so I'm not going to finish number 6. But if you've ever seen the movie Tombstone and you're looking for something to watch around football, each episode's between 30 and 45 minutes, so they're not like very, very bingeable on a Saturday evening if you're not watching college football. But Matty, speaking of football, one time, take us through the car wash. Tell us about South Harmon FF.
Yeah, if you go to South Harmon FF, you can get the articles, you can get the rankings, weekly, seasonal. I'll get the seasonal updated probably next week. I try to do that monthly. You can get links to all the shows. We have the live streams, the podcasts, all that merch. You can go to South Harmon FF, get all that. South Harmon FF on YouTube is where you should be subscribed. Get that notification bell on because we're getting the content ramped up. Obviously, as you guys know, when you're in season, it's chaos. And we're over there just kind of doing the damn thing for South Harmon.
Yeah, check him out. One of my favorite people, period. not like some bullshit disclaimer afterwards. One of my favorite people in this space. No, Matty Kiwoom is one of my favorite people. It was great to meet you. Thank you for coming on. We'll cuss Jerry like a dog in the in our group text. But man, I want to thank you for coming on. I also want to thank Harry Snowman. Good to see Harry back. Podson, Liv. We had so many people. Fredo, everybody tonight in the group chat. I know Jared. I know I'm missing people because we had literally hundreds of comments on this podcast during the live stream. We thank you guys so much. Matty, my brother, thank you. Please check out South Harmon FF. Check out patreon.com/Dynasty Warzone. Check out all of our great sponsors, all the stuff that we offer here. And we're going to get out of here, but we'll get Matty back again, especially in the Dynasty offseason. Matt, thanks for coming back, buddy.
Thank you, brother. It was a pleasure.
See you, man.
Bye.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.